starting to engage with your super is the key consideration at that point, and just starting to set some goals. And that, it sounds really lofty, but if you don't have any tangible endpoint that you're working towards, you're just kind of running blind. It doesn't have to be just the financial aspect of it as well. I think it's really important for people to think about the lifestyle factor or the legacy factor. The course is for those age 50 onwards and that are starting to think about retirement, but it's also for those that are already in retirement and maybe feel a little bit lost with it all or concerned about what retirement will look like in the next 10 years, because, retirement is a really long portion of our lives and it's a huge timeline to be preparing for and to be navigating.
Hi, I'm Owen, the host of the Australian Finance Podcast. This podcast is proudly sponsored by BetaShares, one of the leading providers of ETFs here in Australia. Serving thousands of financial advisors and over 1 million investors, BetaShares manages tens of billions of dollars on behalf of investors right across the country. I'm proud to partner with BetaShares on the Australian Finance Podcast, Australia's premier financial podcast, because there is great alignment in the long-term philosophy shared by both businesses. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast.
Welcome to this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast. I'm Gemma Mitchell and today I'm joined by Tahli, one of our senior advisors. We are talking all things retirement planning. So some very exciting stuff has been happening at Rask. We are very well known for we've got 20, I think, maybe free courses. We've had over 30,000 people enroll in these free courses. And very excitingly, Tahli has just produced our next course, which is going out, and it's all around superannuation, retirement planning. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to do a podcast on it. So today we're going to dive into retirement myths, being asset rich, cash poor, how that can affect your retirement, what to do 5-10 years out from retirement, Tahli's top tips on what people should be thinking about. And we've also got some questions and things in there like how's a granny flat treated and what happens with age pension. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the actual course and who it's for and all those types of things. But so excited to dive into this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Tahli, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm excited for this one.
Yes, I'm so excited for this. Owen and I actually just recorded this morning a Q&A, and one of the listener questions that got sent in is exactly why we created this course. 50, divorced, worried about retirement, doesn't really know where to go to get the information and advice. And I was very excited to be able to say, watch this space, this course is coming out.
Yay. Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear that. That's exciting.
Yeah, so much work went into this. Very, very exciting. And we'll get through all of this and pick your brain on what we need to be thinking about for super and retirement. But for the listeners who are not so familiar with you, I know we've done a couple of episodes. Tell us about yourself, your career, and the type of clients that you help.
Yeah, so I am one of the financial advisors at Rask, the first advisor to join the advice side of our business back in April, I think, or March, which has been an absolute whirlwind. But yeah, prior to that, working in the, more traditional boutique financial planning space, and always worked with a very broad pool of clients. I like to keep it that way and have a finger in every pie, but retirees or pre-retirees and existing retirees are my favorite clients to work with. I just think there is so much opportunity in those final years leading up to retirement to really make a significant impact on people's lives. So yes, I really love providing advice around this sort of area, and not only because it's rewarding for me personally and on the client side of things, but there's a lot of fun strategies that you can use at this point.
Yeah, and I think there's so much misinformation out there and so much overwhelm because it is really tricky. We don't make it easy at all. So I loved going through your course and I was checking it all out, and just the language that you use and how you explain things, because it is so technical, but we need to actually bring it down to what people can understand and what makes sense for them. And you've got lots of analogies and all that kind of stuff in there. So I was very impressed with, how easy it is to follow.
I'm really glad because, yes, that was, part of the reason that we wanted to make the course was realizing that a lot of the content that is out there is either, way too technical or just completely misses the mark.
Yeah, absolutely. Just leaves so much overwhelm. So Tell us about, so first of all, like I absolutely want to pick your brain about, and lots of the content's in there, but tell us about who, like what's this course for, how's it structured, who's your ideal kind of client, who should be doing this kind of stuff?
Yeah. The biased part of me wants to say that there's something in there for everyone, but realistically, the course is for those probably age 50 onwards and that are starting to think about retirement. But it's also for those that are, I guess, already in retirement and maybe feel a little bit lost with it all or concerned about what retirement will look like in the next 10 years because, retirement is a really long portion of our lives and it's a huge timeline to be preparing for and to be navigating. It's for anyone kind of at that point in their life where they just want to feel a little bit more supported and, have some clarity around what the long term looks like for them.
Yeah. And I think because it's free, right? So even if you did it at 30, 40 or whatever and went, I had to skip through lots of work, it's free. You're always, it's amazing. There's so much in there. I totally agree that there is something in there for everyone. And one of the sections that you have in there is about, how long is retirement actually going to be and the different phases? Because you have your active years and then life changes as well. So it might actually be all these different layers. So you go into it in the course about how long is it actually going to be? What's our life expectancy? And then what are these different kind of phases in retirement? So do you want to kind of talk us through what that could look like and how it looks for different people?
Yeah, I think there's definitely the 3 distinct phases, which have come up on the retirement podcast as well quite a lot. And that's your early years where you might be focusing more on traveling and squeezing as much out of life as possible. And then you kind of get to the years where you just want to slow down the pace a little bit, or maybe you don't want to, but your body's telling you to slow down the pace a little bit. And then so the goalpost then and the priorities shift towards more preserving capital, if that is the case, or just being able to confidently know that you do have enough in the tank for the next 10 years. Later on, I guess the goalposts then shift again towards more of a health focus. And that's when legacy planning becomes even more important. And there's, again, at that point in time, depending on your position, but there's a whole bunch of additional strategies and considerations that come into play at that point. So yes, there's definitely 3 distinct components and 4 if you also include, I guess, that pre-retirement run-up.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned how the strategies and things change. What do you think is the most important thing somebody should be focusing on, say if they are 5 to 10 years out from retirement?
Yes. In my notes, I remember that I just wrote super in all capital letters.
Capital.
I definitely think starting to engage with your super, if you haven't already, is the key consideration at that point. And just starting to set some goals, and that it sounds really lofty and kind of the fluff, but if you don't have any tangible endpoint that you're working towards, you're just kind of running blind. So I think being able to sit down and just have some time where you're consciously thinking about what exactly you want to be living through your retirement years, and it doesn't have to be just the financial aspect of it as well. I think it's really important for people to think about the lifestyle factor or the legacy factor. But yes, just planning to whatever degree that is.
Yeah, the plan is so important. And we had that question this morning on the Q&A, the Friday Q&A episode. The lady was talking about how because she didn't have enough information, she doesn't know what she kind of needs to know. She doesn't know if she's on track. I find that so many people kind of get in that it's so overwhelming and then they don't do anything and they leave it so late.
Yes.
Whereas with planning, you can change so much. There's so many different strategies. And even if, you say focus on super, that might not be pumping heaps of money into it. It might just be understanding it and learning about it and optimizing what's in there.
Yes, I've definitely come across clients that have gotten to their 50s and not realised what they were actually invested in their super. And some cases that has been having money sitting all in cash for the last decade and getting to a point in your 50s and be like, oh my God, my money's not been growing to a pace that's even keeping up with inflation. So if that conscious thought in your 50s isn't there to sit down and engage with your super, then that could be something that comes into play when you actually start pulling money out of super. And by then, that's 10 years of potential growth completely missed.
Yeah. And time is like your most valuable asset at this point in your life, right? You talk about in the course, and I'd love you to talk us through it. You mentioned that a lot of people have like an income focus in retirement, but we need to kind of balance that with capital growth as well. Do you want to run us through income versus capital growth and what things we should be considering maybe on the lead up and then maybe in retirement, how that might change?
Yes. And I do think the conversation around this in the broader community is shifting. I think traditionally there was this emphasis on in the lead up to retirement and during retirement, all of your eggs are in the income generating basket. Whereas from the advisor's point of view as well, and a lot of advisors that you speak to will kind of be reiterating that it's still important that we focus on total return regardless of what kind of life stage you're at. So yes, I think total return is king always, especially when we start to consider the timelines that people have in retirement nowadays and the improving health that we have in Australia in particular. That means that, retirement isn't 10 years, it's likely to be 20, 30 years. So if you're not achieving some capital growth throughout that period, then your money is not going to be sustaining you for that 30-year period. So super important that we don't kind of turn away from capital growth throughout our retirement years. But that said, there will come a time where you may need to shift your, percentage focus on the capital side versus your income generating assets. And so what that means in practice is maybe with your super, and again, not a recommendation, but for a lot of people, it's maintaining, say, a high growth investment option in their super up until age 50, 55, and then maybe staggering down to just the growth or the balanced, which still gives you a reasonable amount of capital growth potential. But you're just starting to slowly de-risk the portfolio. And the main reason we want to do that is because during retirement, we're repeatedly withdrawing money out of that environment, which means not just relying on the income that gets generated, but within your super, it's most likely that you will be selling assets as well and shaving off some profit repeatedly to pay out your pension. So obviously, we want to try and minimize the ups and downs during that period where we're shaving off profit, hopefully shaving profit, not loss. That volatility in the market is less impactful on what lands in our bank account.
Yeah, and I know you talk about it in the course and we talk about it a lot here and on the retirement podcast as well, those layers like a bucket strategy or something so that you have, potentially you're putting away a couple of years worth of income requirements so that you can take a little bit more risk and have more growth assets and they've got longer before they need to be sold down to bring in your income. So all of these types of strategies are so handy to know. But I find when I was retirement planning, I would find that people have this misconception that your time frame is between now and when you retire, and then your investing time frame. And so they'd be like, oh, well, I've only got 5 years, and maybe I shouldn't have growth assets. I'm like, well, no, for most of us, that big amount of money in super is probably going to stay invested and it still needs to grow. So I love that. That's very important.
Yeah. Another thing on that similar-ish wavelength that comes up a lot is this assumption that it's all or nothing with our super, and we either have just income coming out of our account-based pension when we started, and that is our only source of income, or we get the option of the government age pension, and it's not this combination of you can have a fully invested superannuation portfolio, plus you might also be eligible for a little bit of government age pension support that steadily increases over time. So yes, there's a number of different options for income throughout retirement, and they can look just as diversified as they do throughout your working life.
Yeah. I think like you've got some information in there about non-assessable assets for Centrelink and different like tips and traps. One of my favorite retirement strategies, well, I love the a cash out and recontribution strategy. So for anyone who's listening, that's where you change the taxable component of the money made up. So that was like my favorite strategy to do for people when they, got over 60. But you have one in there about the age gap. Like we actually see quite a few clients come through Rask Advice and, that do actually have a pretty big age gap. So there's some pretty cool stuff you can do there for Centrelink as well. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Again, no financial advice. Please get your own financial advice. This is all for education and information purposes to let you know the things that are available. But yeah, there's some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, this is a fun one. And I love it because it always gets a laugh out of the clients when you bring it up too, because it's kind of like a almost like a little naughty strategy that feels a bit like, oh, this is weird.
It does. It feels naughty. That's right.
But essentially, so if someone is of age pension age, which at the moment is age 67, and they have a younger partner, if that younger partner's superannuation money is not yet in the pension phase, their super is not assessed as an asset to that household. So a couple of things there too, just to come back to the absolute basics. For someone who's in a partnership that's applying for age pension, generally your household assets are assessed. So being able to exclude your younger partner's superannuation pool can be really beneficial in maximising your age pension entitlements.
Yeah, it can change your whole eligibility. Because I think people don't realise that that it all gets pulled in a pool, right? So it's their income, their assets in their name, their cash, everything, regardless of their Centrelink age. Your partner's things is all seen. Because I would also see people go, oh, we might buy that in so-and-so's name or, so that I get more eligibility for pension. And you're like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
It's purely only that accumulation super while they're under pension age.
Yes. So if your younger partner has investments outside of super, they would still be assessed, but it's just that super money. Because essentially, like in practical terms, that is not accessible money to the household while it's still in accumulation. So yes, it can be very strategic for maximising age pension, even if it is just for a couple of years until that partner obviously becomes of age pension age or switches on their account-based pension. But there's definitely some downsides to it as well. Like the money that's sitting in accumulation is obviously going to be taxed at 15% while it sits in that environment, whereas it would be not taxed at all if it was in the account-based pension. And for a lot of people, not accessing or drawing on both superannuation funds just isn't viable. So it might not be appropriate, but it's something that's worth exploring if there is an age gap.
Yeah, and then you can just do the way up, what's the potential tax, potential returns. It's all kind of, like there's no guarantee, but then you go, right, well, how much potential pension and how many years, and then they can make an informed decision. Some people will be like, it's more trouble than it's worth, and then other people, like a recon strategy actually, it's like sometimes people just go, nah, I don't care what my kids pay in tax or whatever. They're like, too hard, too much paperwork. Yeah, so I think this is why you want to be getting advice at different stages, especially at 60, so that you can be kind of looking at, well, what are my options, and then doing that trade-off. Can I be bothered? Is it worth it?
Yeah. And then I think it all comes back to what you mentioned earlier as well around a lot of people don't know what they don't know. So being able to go through a course like this will at least provide some food for thought and kind of indicate to you whether or not it's worthwhile then going to speak with a professional.
Yeah. So one of my favorite parts of the course that you've done, which I'm now going to make sure all of our courses going forwards have, is the quick detours. Because it's so true. Like, when we're talking, we're just like, oh, actually just quickly on that point. And we do take a detour. And then when I saw it in there, I was like, oh, this is perfect. It's so good. So there are some quick detours in there. And one of them I love is about granny flats. So we're seeing, cost of living crisis, housing crisis. I'm seeing more and more people have granny flat type arrangements and accommodation and things. And we just talked about that, superannuation in accumulation while you're under age pension age isn't assessed. The family home's not assessed. But can you talk to us about what happens with granny flats? This, I think, is something that a lot of people would be thinking about.
Yeah, granny flats is a very deep pool. I think from a strategic point of view, there's a lot to it. But to keep it short, one really important thing to clarify is that a granny flat right in the eyes of Centrelink is very different to what you and I might think of when we think about a granny flat, which is really like a separate structure on the back of our own principal place of residence that we might have someone else live in, which is totally different. But what we're talking about in this context is where you might move in, for example, with your child, your adult child, in the spare bungalow out the back, which would be that traditional idea of a granny flat. And you have a right to reside there for the rest of your life. And if it's a formalized legal agreement, it doesn't have to be formalized, but generally formalizing it gives Centrelink more of a concrete evidence that this sort of agreement exists. But it changes the way that you would be assessed as a homeowner or not a homeowner when it comes to applying for an age pension. And there's a few different ways that it can play out too. So it doesn't have to just be moving into the flat out the back of your child's house. For some clients, and what we often see is maybe wanting to transfer the title of your home to your child now, but still live in that home. And in that instance, it could be viewed as a formal granny flat right. And it has a lot of implications. So not just on your own social security entitlements, but that can also impact your stamp duty obligations, particularly in that event where you're transferring title of ownership. That, again, could have implications for capital gains tax. And then the longer term piece is it can have really significant impact on your access to and cost of residential aged care.
Yeah.
So that's a
There's
big
so
one.
many knock-on effects. Hey,
Yes.
And so where I see it kind of play out is probably most commonly where people, like the older person, the parent, will give money or use their own money to build a granny flat, but then potentially it's more like a gift because they're not on the title. And how does you actually kind of prove that, well, that is actually my asset, even though it's on my kids' land? And then like the estate planning part of it, the legal side, not just Centrelink, but all of these kind of other knock-on effects. If you've got other children and you've, put a couple of $100,000 in investment, growth into another property that's for one of the kids, gets really, really messy. But I think this is one thing that we'll see more and more, and this is where financial advice, or even just talking to the Centrelink, like they've got the financial, what are they called? FIS officers?
Yes, yeah. Financial Information Services.
Services officers, yeah. And you can make an appointment. Lots of people don't realise, but you can make an appointment with them and just talk about, if I did this, how would it impact? What does this happen? And people think that, Centrelink's out to get you and they don't want to help, but they'll actually go, oh no, if you do that, it's considered gifting. And this is it's so good to be proactive and consider all these things before you jump into these strategies.
Yes, because done right too, creating that sort of agreement can be really beneficial for all parties involved, but done incorrectly, it can be pretty detrimental.
A nightmare. Yeah. It's kind of like when we mix family and money, and then you've got Centrelink on the other side of it, and potentially the ATO.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Messy. Just get advice. But that's the kind of stuff that I love that's in the course, because lots of people wouldn't think about that. They think about it being a lot more straightforward. So one of the other things that I love that you brought up in there, which I see lots of people in this position, this concept of being asset rich and cash poor. So talk to me about, what that means and how does it impact Aussies in retirement?
Yeah, I think this is just such an Australian thing because we love property. So what we often see
This is me right now. I'm very cash poor.
Oh, goodness me. Yes. We love property here. So for that age bracket in particular, a lot of older Australians do approach retirement with a lot of wealth tied up in property, which gives them wealth from an asset point of view, but it's not generating a lot of cash flow for them. So although on paper things might look great, being able to get by day to day becomes quite difficult. And what often happens in that instance is that people might just work for longer than they need to because they can't fund or replace the income stream that work is providing. So yes, essentially it's having money tied up in property, which is a great asset, but it is illiquid in the nature that it's not going to give you 50 grand when you need it. If you need the money, you're going to have to go through the process of selling the entire property. So yes, it's a big one. And I guess the most common ways that we see people navigate this throughout or as they're approaching retirement is downsizing. Like that would be the most obvious solution. But from an emotional point of view, it's obviously not an easy choice to make.
Yeah. And even I'm seeing people now, they have a goal to downsize, but sometimes it's kind of a sidestep and that they think that it will actually be a downsize and release like equity. But sometimes, those smaller places, newer, depending on where they want to go, they might actually cost similar. So it's not something that you can rely on. But if that's one of the levers that you can fund your retirement, that's really, really handy. I think we see, people want to simplify things. So if you do have multiple properties or even just one investment property, I tend to see people want to simplify things in retirement and just not, if they're traveling or in the camper van, they don't want to get that real estate call. And that can be how you kind of tap into, well, now at least we're just going to have it invested and we're going to focus on that growth income kind of strategy.
Yeah, which can be a really difficult transition.
Difficult is being coined.
Oh, goodness me. Yes, a difficult transition to make because if you're just so used to property being your primary avenue to invest, you know that you've got a valuation on that property. And when you occasionally check realestate.com, you see what value it roughly sits at. And you know that every month you get a owner's statement from your property manager, which gives you an income. So to move that wealth into something like the stock market can be really foreign and difficult. But that's where the beauty of super lies too, because you can put it into super in certain circumstances and have that money, I guess, invested on your behalf without much ongoing management from you.
Yeah, I think that transition can be really difficult as well, just like that sentence. And, we see people that, yes, they're so confident with property and then they haven't really started to learn. They leave it quite late to learn about investing in shares. And that might be they had an investment property or they were just focused on paying off their home loan. And then they thought, once that debt's gone, now I'm going to learn about super and investing. And that can be a very steep learning curve.
Yeah.
So I like people to think like longer out. And even if it's just a little bit of investing outside property or taking more notice of your super, it's going to make it a lot more comfortable for you if this, does actually come up that you get out of property and now everything's in the market.
Yes. Yeah. But never too late.
Absolutely. Never too late. So we talked about a few myths around super, Centrelink, assets. What are some other myths that you think come up around retirement planning?
One of the biggest ones, and I don't know if it's really a myth, more of just a common self-belief, is that retirement will just work itself out.
Yeah. Yes.
And shout out to my parents. I love you both. But that's something I've seen, repeatedly that makes me want to bang my head against a wall. But no, it is common, and I think there is an idea, that it will all just work itself out. But I think that stems more so from a place of fear and believing deep down that there is nothing that you can do to make your circumstances better, and therefore there's no point in trying, or that, the other idea is that engaging with it is going to be too upsetting. So the easier option is to not engage, which is, tricky to watch, especially coming from our world and knowing all the various strategies and levers that can be pulled to make a really big impact. So I think that's probably one of the biggest.
Yeah, I 100% agree that that's such a frustration. And there's just so much that you can do. And even if it's just optimizing your existing things, but the earlier out, it's never too late, but the earlier, further away you do it, the less tweaks, the less stuff that you have to do. I also really like the idea of not head in the sand, because imagine if your retirement is going to be so different to what your income is now. So imagine if, you're not going to have the same quality of life. I would prefer to know that so I can slowly start leaning into that life. And by kind of getting used to that, you're probably freeing up some income that then could actually be directed to making your retirement better.
Yes.
We talk about it with the home loan cliff. So when everyone came off 2% rates, but they hadn't adjusted their life early enough to be on 6%, they're like, oh, just wait till it happens and then I'll adjust. I'm like, if we know that something's going to be significantly different, what can we do to start leaning into that a little bit so it's not such a shock to the system?
Yeah, that's such a good point, because, otherwise it is just a jarring, awful experience.
Yeah, I hear people say it all the time. They're like, I'll worry about it in the future. It's like that present bias. I'll worry about it in the future. I'll just have beans on toast in retirement. I'm like, chances are you're still going to want to do all the same stuff that you do right now.
Yep. Yes. But genuinely 9 times out of 10, I think it does come from a place of just self-doubt, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it's just so complex.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be.
No, it definitely doesn't. But it's and I guess this is the thing, the more you learn about it, you're going to learn about what you don't know. And so that might just be super little tweaks and things that can make it more effective. So you've got courses like this. If you're really in a bad spot, you could be talking to the National Debt Helpline, free financial counsellors. It might be that your super fund provides webinars and education and stuff like that. But the free Rask course, absolutely nailed it. So that was my tip for retirement, kind of ease into it. What do you want to give us your top 3 tips for somebody that is planning their retirement? They're not putting their head in the sand.
Yeah, I think I've probably kind of hinted at this throughout our conversation already, but the big one is just to start thinking about it and start mapping out what it might look like. And one of my favorite ways to do that is coming back to the absolute fundamentals and looking at your budget now. I love a budget, and just running through what exactly you're earning now and what exactly you're spending now, and what might that look like in retirement. So what costs might go up, what costs might come down, and then how are you going to replace that income? And just getting an idea of what you need. In the course, there is a budget spreadsheet already in there with a pre-retirement and post-retirement version, and then a lump sum savings target calculator.
Yes, it's so easy that you can just follow it so easily. But that's probably the big question, right? People are like, well, how do I even know how much is enough? So we have the Australian Retirement Standard, which is a big survey on what other people are spending. But you don't really know, unless you go through it and go, yep, that's what I'm doing, or this is, you have a budget. It's just a plan, your expenses. You can't really work out if that's realistic for your lifestyle. So I think there's 2 kind of ways people calculate it. Is they go off that, or some other people go, well, what are we spending right now, and go 70, is it 70%? The other kind of rule that people might go with, 70% of pre-retirement expenses.
Yeah, I really think it depends on, I sound like the cliche finance person here, but it really It just varies so much from person to person.
Every answer from a financial advisor is always, it depends. But it's true. It is. So unless you go through that exercise and work out what it is for you, it might be that it's really similar to what they say for the retirement standard, but you won't know until you go through the activity. And then you can put in we might not have our home loan. I'm going to have more time for travel and coffee and all of this kind of stuff. But that's like the key to planning, right? Is to know what's the target? What do you actually need?
Yeah. And just to quickly kind of like explain, I guess, how varied that can be for people too. A common belief is that, you retire with no debt. And for a lot of people, it actually might make sense to keep some debt, whether that's on an investment property or maybe it is on your principal place of residence in certain circumstances. So, yeah, the cost piece post-retirement can look so different. But anyway, coming back to your actual question on tips for preparing for retirement.
Yeah.
The other
so
one,
number one is starting as soon as possible and actually having a plan.
Yep.
Great.
The other one, I would say, is diversification. So just in general, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. And that doesn't have to be just thinking about your investment diversification and making sure you've got the right asset exposure and yada, yada, yada. It could also be from like the broader structure perspective. So again, starting to think about how much of your wealth is in property. And although that is an asset class, I think when the everyday Australian is thinking about investing, they kind of segment property out into its own little bucket. But yeah, making sure you don't have all of your wealth tied up into property. And even if you've got a lot of property, making sure that you've got properties in various regions, for example, or different types of properties. And then also thinking about having money both inside super and outside of super as well, because we still want to have that flexibility to to select, I guess, the timing of our retirement. And then thinking about too, like over time, where your income might be coming from, and thinking about the role that age pension might play in that, and how that can supplement the other things like super or personal investments, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that diversification piece is so important because, yes, it can be your investments, it can be the actual assets, it can be your income streams and how that changes through there. I think that's really, really valuable. When I like the idea of having, like, obviously I'm a massive fan of super. I love it. I think we're very lucky to have this retirement system in Australia. But I like the idea of assets outside as well because, we know they keep changing the super rules. So that just gives you a little bit more, comfort, control and flexibility that, if you decide to retire 2 years before your preservation age, or whatever that looks like for you, or have a mini retirement and then maybe go back to work, whatever that looks like, I think that flexibility is key. And, we know super's tax effective for most of us, but it doesn't always come down to what's most tax effective, best return. It kind of has to fit in with your lifestyle and what you want to achieve.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think surprising for a lot of people to hear from someone in finance.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. I think they think when they see a financial advisor, they're going to be told to spend less, to cut out all the fun in their life, just invest, all that kind of stuff. We're not that mean.
Yeah.
We're definitely not that mean. Okay, so to wrap this up, the course is coming out. There is so much in it. Like we've just talked about all these different tips for people in retirement and how, so imagine how much is actually jam-packed into this course, and it is free, absolutely free. For anyone that's not aware, we have what's called Rask Core. It's a membership, gets insights in investing and things. And one of the things that we've done to revamp this is it now has these personas. So people like case studies that you can actually follow. So there's the first one that went out was Alex, a professional. We've got some retirees, pre-retirees, we've got a divorced person, completely made up scenarios, but the financial advisors have actually put in, well, based on their strategy, what would we recommend? So it's not financial advice, but you might actually see someone in there, one of these personas that actually kind of resonates with your situation, might inspire you to see, well, how do you work with a financial advisor and what types of things do they recommend? So I would keep an eye out for that. absolutely keep an eye out for this coming out very, very soon. But if you're not in the retirement space, there's so many others. So we have just one on superannuation. We have one on starting businesses, cash flow, budgets, investing in ETFs. There is over 20 courses there. So go and check them out. There's something for everyone and they're all free.
Which we love.
We love a free giveaway. So Tahli, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast. I can't wait for the course to come out and start seeing the amazing feedback coming in.
Fingers crossed. Thank you, Gem.
No, it's amazing. It'll be so good. And you've set the bar high for the other ones that we've got coming out in the new year, which is exciting.
Yeah, very exciting times at Rask.
Great. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can get daily videos and podcasts on Rask's YouTube channel. Or if you want to enroll in a free course on investing, property, business, money, you name it, you can join over 34,000 other students and enroll in a free course on the Rask website. Simply head to www.rask.com.au and follow the prompts. Thanks for watching this Rask podcast.